Good afternoon to you all. Whether you are here in glorious 3D in Newcastle or joining virtually from the comfort of your own home or the relative discomfort of your office, I am so pleased that we are yet again trying a new way of delivering our AGM to make it as accessible as possible. The decision to run a fully virtual event last year was brave, and while it wasn't a complete success, it certainly taught us something about how our AGM can become more inclusive. As you know, it's been our practice for many years to move the location of AGM each year so that we share the burden of lengthy and costly travel around. This does mean that some people only attend an AGM when it is close by, and some don't attend at all. I think that previously we only imagined that it was those with school-age children or perhaps adult care responsibilities that would particularly struggle to make it to an in-person event. But one of the things that struck me most after last year's event was that some members said they were attending because the event was virtual and therefore accessible in a way AGM had not been before. And another member said that they felt more confident to speak at AGM when it was virtual. I think this tells us something about the barriers to AGM attendance not being solely about distance and having to stay away from home. This year, the threat of COVID has not disappeared, and there will be members who aren't advised to travel or mix with others, especially as we go into the winter season, when many experts predict other viruses will delight in the depletion of our immune systems due to all the lockdowns. So we decided to try something new, a hybrid AGM that would be more accessible and more inclusive, that would allow for more and different members to attend. Luckily, our chosen venue for 2021 is pretty big, and that allowed us to remove the restrictions on numbers of attendance in person. There are bound to be some hiccups with the hybrid format, learning the lessons from last year, but we are absolutely determined to do as we did last year and learn all of the lessons we can to make future hybrid AGMs ever better. For me personally, nothing can beat the feeling of solidarity, camaraderie and joy that an in-person event brings. But I am not naive, and I know that this experience and viewpoint is not universal. For some, being face-to-face is far more challenging, COVID or not. And for some, the price they pay for those wonderful feelings that I've just described is simply too high. So we'll continue to try and make our events hybrid and therefore more inclusive. As ever, please give as much feedback as possible and help us develop and improve. You may notice that this year we focused more on member participation and less on a fancy platform. And that is deliberate and as a direct result of feedback from last year's virtual event. So it falls to me to open our AGM and conference, and in doing so, to reflect on the foregoing year. I genuinely feel that each year I say, what a year it's been. And this year, it's not going to be any different. I stood here last year and I spoke to you about the unification process and how tough it would be. How foolish I was, how naive. I thought it would be tough, but in reality, it has been far, far worse. The confusion and frustration around assignment and alignment processes were awful for members who faced uncertainty in the transfer process. That was bad enough, but the weeks after the transfer have shown just how bad things were in the CRCs and in the MPS. The coming together has exposed the weaknesses across all of the probation employers. Workloads have skyrocketed to ever more dangerous levels. and staff struggling to adapt to a new employer and new ways of working are bombarded with tick box spreadsheets, can't even say it, tick box spreadsheets and demands to complete mandatory online training. Confusion and chaos reign in probation right now, with pay problems that elicit 17 different responses depending on who you ask. Continuing confusion about the consultations on major changes involved in moving to the target operating model for probation service, and workloads so high that newly qualified officers leave rather than suffer in the way that they have seen colleagues suffering during their training. The whole system is in disarray, but I just want to highlight a few key areas that we are working on at present. SPO, Senior Probation Officer workloads are out of control. They have been a concern since 2014, but in the last year, they have genuinely reached crisis point. SPOs managing a team of people with excessive workloads find themselves at the mercy of a resourcing model, which says they can manage 10 people, but it doesn't mean 10 people, it means 10 full-time equivalents, which, if you take into account part-time workers and PQuit trainees who don't count as a full person, means that an SPO can have 15 or 20 staff to manage, all needing supervision, all needing input on their work around risk, all struggling with excessive workloads, and needing support to navigate massive organisational change. On top of this, SPOs are the first port of call for all those pay problems, which we have discovered can be so intractable that it takes teams of people months to resolve them. And every time a new process is introduced, every time an audit or a case review suggests the need for practice improvement, more work is heaped on SPOs. Our SPO forum relaunched this year, and Vice Chair Carol Doherty has created a space for SPO members to come together and to offer and seek support and to make sure their concerns are raised. Sonia Flynn attended the last meeting to hear firsthand the views of members, and Carol is now working with the team who are carrying out the management review that we secured commitment for in our 2018 pay deal. It sure takes time to effect change in the civil service, but we are proudly making sure that the voices of our members are heard by the people who are making the decisions. Another issue looming is the use of visor and the police vetting that is required in order to access the system. This continues to be a huge concern. Although we know that vetting failure rates are very low, the impact on those who fail this vetting is huge. Movement to a different area of work has an impact on morale and on career development. But more insidious is the impact on the diversity of our workforce. Police vetting for visor is now part of the recruitment process. And so people who fail this vetting will not be employed in frontline probation roles. To understand why this impacts on diversity, we must consider the known reasons for failure of vetting. You'll automatically fail if you have live county court judgments against you. This is a situation that many people who have experienced financial hardship will face. If you're a Black or Asian man, you are more likely to be stopped by the police, more likely to be arrested, more likely to be charged, and at court, you're more likely to receive a custodial sentence than if you are a white man. Police vetting looks at convictions. It looks at the convictions that you have, but it also looks at convictions of those closest to you. It surely follows that people in our society who are more likely to be convicted and are more likely to have families who have been convicted of a crime will be less likely to be able to work in probation in the future. Next, we consider another reason for failure of vetting: those who have been a victim of domestic abuse, but remain connected in some way to their abuser, perhaps because they've got a child or children together, perhaps because their finances are interlinked. This can be considered as an ongoing link to a criminal network by the police, and therefore vetting would fail. So those who have experienced financial hardship and did not have the benefit of a cushion to help them and ended up having county court judgments against them, poor and working class people are less likely to be able to work in probation. Black and Asian men face far higher likelihood of failing police vetting and therefore ever more barriers to employment in probation. And victims who struggle to fully disconnect from their abuser, either because of the nature of the abuse or because of some other link between them, are also less likely to be able to work in probation. At a time when HMPPS are proudly announcing the employment of 1,000 people with lived experience of the criminal justice system, the probation P of HMPPS is forcing people with lived experience who already work into the system into sidelined careers out of direct frontline practice. And recruiting new staff with such experience will be ever harder. Make no mistake, there are now and have been for decades people working in probation at all levels with lived experience of the justice system. And probation practice is all the richer for their presence in our workforce. Now, however, we face people with this invaluable experience being recruited only to special roles, separate from ordinary probation practice. Napo's position is that people with lived experience of the justice system should be able to work in any and all roles in probation. Of course, we know that careful consideration must be given to recruitment and that assessments will need to be made to enable it. But external vetting by the police for the sole purpose of using a computer system should not be a barrier to creating a diverse workforce. As you may imagine, we've always taken a solution-focused approach to this problem. First, we suggested that Visor was not really the best way to share information with other agencies. And we gave alternative suggestions, such as other agencies having restricted access to Delius records instead, asking other agencies to do the administrative work rather than probation. This wasn't seen as feasible. We then suggested that those who failed their Visor vetting could be given a protected caseload that just didn't require Visor use. This was seen previously as not possible in the MPS. When unification was on the table, we tried again and said that a mixed caseload in the probation service would surely allow for staff without Visor vetting to have a caseload that didn't need Visor use. But again, our reasonable suggestions were politely ignored. We will continue to raise this and to campaign for it. We are carefully monitoring the impact of vetting on staff who transferred from the CRCs into the probation service this summer. We've raised the issue with Justin Russell after the HMIP report on race and probation, and we're now working really hard to campaign on it more widely. Yet another ongoing and really tricky issue is OMIC, offender management in custody, the movement of the supervision of clients. Please don't compare me to Theresa May. When we even mention OMIC, the sky falls down. And I think that's really appropriate. So OMIC is the movement of the supervision of clients during the custodial part of their sentence into the prison, where a team of probation and prison staff will work together to carry out all of the tasks that were formerly performed by an offender manager in the community and offender supervisor in custody. We're told this is being done because end-to-end offender management didn't work. But we know that end-to-end offender management wasn't given much chance because community staff weren't resourced to travel to prisons. In some areas, there were bans on travel to cut costs. and excessive workloads meant that custody cases had to be deprioritised. Despite the obvious solution to the problem being to fix the issues and give the resources, OMIC was apparently the answer. So now, instead of the community practitioner being the consistent thread through the sentence from custody into the community, someone serving a custodial sentence will have a new offender manager every time they move prisons, and they will only meet their community officer close to their release. OMIC moves the work formerly done in the community and adds it to the work formerly done in prison. It therefore moves staff into prisons to do the work. But at present, there is no workload measurement tool for OMIC. So inevitably, workloads are high because not enough staff were put into the prison to do the work. Staffing is too low, and because the administrative support comes from the prison teams, it's taking a long time for them to adjust to tasks they have had no experience of. Most concerning is the plan to move prison-based SPOs into the line management of prison governors, and this is due to happen soon. We are utterly opposed to this and have been since the start. Probation service staff have different terms and conditions and different ways of working to our sisters and brothers that work for the prison service. That's not bad, it's just different. The experience during COVID showed us that these differences can cause massive tensions, and we have had to intervene in several regions where prison governors, even before they were line managing the SPOs, were insisting that despite probation policy being to work from home wherever possible, the probation staff had to attend the prison every single working day. SPO members working in prisons tell us they are looking to move roles to avoid the inevitable issues that will make their positions very tough indeed once the transfer of line management happens. We've yet to see the full guidance for the line management arrangements, and rest assured, we will be making strong representations about any moves that will reduce terms and conditions for our members. Unification has meant that programmes work all now resides in the probation service. This is cause for celebration. However, there are many concerns about moves to alter programmes and delivery requirements and the potential for dumbing down skilled work. We await eagerly the promised consultation on the detailed plans for programmes in the target operating model, but we do anticipate having to fight the move away from quality and towards economy and cost cutting as the driver for the changes. COVID has brought us many challenges, and its impact will no doubt resonate throughout the system for years. One of the challenges we now face is backlogs of cases waiting to go through the courts. We all know that the court system was struggling anyway, and closures of courts, low staffing, lack of resources meant there were already delays in the system, but some now face a wait of years for their case to be heard. And members working in courts face ever more pressure to produce their advice to the court in the quickest, simplest way possible. This despite many reports reinforcing what we already knew, that a quality pre-sentence report cannot be produced quickly. The direction of travel, however, is towards speedy justice, seemingly at any cost. Rather than reopening closed courts or investing in the staff who make the system work, the focus is now on extending court sitting hours and pushing through cases, ignoring the warnings that speedy justice sometimes simply isn't justice at all. In unpaid work, there are also backlogs due to the pandemic, and Napo's safety first approach to recovery is being pushed past its limit by the fervour to ramp up delivery despite concerns about virus transmission. Alongside this, we have the challenge of unification with the chaos that has brought. Unpaid work staff face uncertainty, and the planned work with trade unions on the new operating model, which could have helped to deal with some of these issues, have been forgotten about as senior leaders just try to deal with the immediate crisis facing them. There are so many other problems in the system, far too many for me to list, even though we've got 3 days. Does it all sound a little bit bleak? At a recent branch meeting I went to, we acknowledged it is all quite bleak and that much work is needed to get us to a point where practitioners feel that probation is functioning again. The damage that has been done to the system is both broad and deep and will take many years to repair. Amidst this bleakness, however, there's a spark of hope. I promise there is. This hope is Napo, us, the members, the reps, the staff, working together, not just to represent the interests of members and their employment rights, but also to represent the profession, the idea and the ideals of probation. Our reps, activists and members have worked tirelessly through the pandemic to keep themselves, their colleagues, their clients and the communities that they serve as safe as possible. The haste to recover has been resisted at all levels. And while we struggle to hold the line on this, we must always remember that safety comes first. Keeping us safe in our work is a legal duty on our employer, and whether the risk be COVID or work-related stress, the same duty of care is owed to us. If you feel unsafe at work due to COVID or due to work-related stress, please contact your branch reps. Follow the advice that we've issued, 4 easy steps. Escalate the concerns to your link officer and official, and make sure that we all work together to fight these significant threats to our safety. When I was writing this speech, I thought that in many ways, it may seem we've lost some of our power since TR. The civil service approach is not always conducive to problem solving, and the solution-focused approach we took when we were in smaller probation trusts seems a long way away. But we do have power in our union. We have collective power, far greater than the sum of its parts. I'm looking forward to spending these 3 days discussing and debating how we should use that power, how we should channel and focus our efforts to effect real change. If the situation for probation members in England and Wales sounds a little bleak, our colleagues in CAFCAS and Probation Northern Ireland aren't faring much better. The organisational change issues aren't necessarily there in the same way, but the workload issues and the pay problems are. In CAFCAS, our reps have been working tirelessly to protect members from the threats of COVID and work-related stress. Dialogue with the employer has been established, but there is much work to do. And I know that that will be discussed more tomorrow, so I am not going to repeat it all today and ruin Ian's speech. There is, just like in probation, no easy or quick solution to the workload issues. The work is there and is increasing as a result of the pandemic. The funding provided to meet the need was one-off. It won't continue, and it hasn't appreciably made a difference. CAFCAS needs serious investment, long-term funding to increase staffing and reduce workloads to manageable levels. In Northern Ireland, workloads continue to be an issue, and we're working really hard to put in place processes to try and address the workloads and ensure that staff have a route to measure and manage the issues that they face. With all of this going on in our working lives, it can be really difficult to take notice of what's happening around us and to make space for things that we as a professional association should be involved in. That's why I want to pay tribute to Emma Cluley as she steps down as managing editor of the Probation Journal. Emma has made an incredible contribution to Napo in this role, and I know she will be greatly missed. I know that the recent editorial board meeting was her last, and her report to this AGM will also be her last. Please show your appreciation for her dedication and commitment. Yesterday, I was pleased to chair the Women in Napo Fringe meeting, where we launched a research partnership with long-term member Becky Shepherd. Becky is looking at vicarious trauma in women who work with women, and we hope that her findings will help us to secure better support for staff working with women on probation and with women victims. This is a really, really important topic, and I'm looking forward to working with Becky on it. Women members will be receiving an invitation to participate in the research, and we hope you'll share it with any women colleagues who work with women to increase the number of responses we get. So I've been reflecting lots in recent weeks on the issues that women face in their daily lives. The sentencing of a police officer for the murder of Sarah Everard has sent a shockwave through society. But the misogyny that enabled that heinous crime has always existed, and we have always known about it. Even after the media was filled with people saying what must be done about the problem of institutionalised misogyny, in my home area of North Yorkshire, our police, fire and crime commissioner in an interview made comments that were textbook-worthy examples of victim blaming. He's still in post for now, although he has been widely criticised. He's apologised, but the problem is not that he said the comments in public where we could hear them. The problem is that he held those beliefs. The problem is that women are being told to use tracking apps, avoid walking alone at night, modify your clothing, change your behaviour to keep yourself safe. No one, except perhaps some probation officers, is intervening to remove people from positions of power and influence when they say or do things that demonstrate misogyny. We must, all of us, make ourselves free to do this, to call out misogyny, to demand better from those in positions of power. Tomorrow at our AGM, we will launch our race action plan and dedicate ourselves to being anti-racist. Not just to say we will avoid being racist, but that we must ever strive to be anti-racist, actively and using all of the power and influence that we have. We must do this collectively and individually in our work, in our union, and in whatever we do when we are not working or coming together in Napo. We must become champions of anti-racism in our workplaces and in our communities. I will be proudly signing my pledge, and I hope that each of you will too. Together in Napo, we can do great things, and there are a great many things to do. I hope that you will all leave here after 3 days of being inspired by other activists and spread the word to workmates who are not yet members, that they can and should join Napo and share the joy, the antidote to despair that our solidarity is to us. As I enter my last year as chair, I will hold those feelings close to me and use them as fuel to fight the fight that needs to be fought and to share as much of that antidote to despair as I can with others. And so that we know we are not doing this alone, as I finish, I'd like to read a message of solidarity from Unison, who are holding their own conference this week and will be inevitably discussing many of the similar things that we will be. Unison sends a message of solidarity to our sisters and brothers in Napo with best wishes for a successful AGM. We look forward to working with you on the many challenges which lie ahead. Together, we can prevail. Thank you.